Time for the OK. Welcome to the stream home edition. In the upcoming US elections, both Republicans and Democrats have set their sights on securing a particularly intriguing, diverse community, Indian Americans. Here's how they're being rude.
Senator Kamala Harris will be the first person of Indian heritage to be nominated for vice president on a major party ticket.
My grandparents were phenomenal. We would go back to India like every other year. My grandfather fought for and was a defender of the freedom of India. When I was a young girl, being the eldest grandchild, my grandfather would take me on his morning walk. All of his buddies who also were great leaders, and they would talk about the importance of fighting for democracy and the importance of fighting for civil rights and that people would be treated equally regardless of where they were born or the circumstances of their birth. Those walks along the beach in India really planted something in my mind and created a commitment in me. Before I even realized it, it has led me to where I am today.
He needs no introduction. His name comes up in almost every conversation. The President of the United States of America, Mr. Donald Trump. Mr. President, you had introduced me to your family in 2017, and today I have the honor to introduce you to my family.
Getting out the Indian American vote. If you would like to be in this conversation, be a political pundit on YouTube, you can absolutely do it. Jump into the comments section. I will try and bring your conversation into the stream. Hello, guests. Welcome to the stream. I will say hello to you. You will introduce yourself to our international audience. Adi, welcome to the stream. Go ahead, do your own introduction.
Hey, everybody. Thank you so much for having me. First of all, I'm really excited to be here. My name is Adi. I am currently in Michigan, traveling throughout the United States, working in campaign politics mostly for the last 10 years. Used to work at the Republican National Committee headquarters, previously worked on Capitol Hill.
Welcome to the stream, Sana. It's great to have you on the stream. Tell everybody who you are and what you do.
Hey everybody, it's really wonderful to be here. My name is Sana Khutubuddin and I'm the National Advocacy Executive of the Indian American Muslim Council. And we engage on civic and democratic issues at the grassroots level. And I work as a UN consultant on emergency education relief.
Mm-hmm. Great, nice to have you. Thank you so much. And Seema, welcome to our conversation. Tell everybody who you are.
Hi, everyone. I'm a journalist. I'm based in Washington, D.C. I've covered U.S.-India relations for the last 25 odd years. I am a columnist for the Economic Times.
Seema, why is, in the United States, the Indian American vote so important this year?
Mainly because in the battleground states, they could be decisive. And there are about 1.2 million Indian American voters in about 9 battleground states. And we know from 2016 that the Democrats lost by a few thousand votes in at least 3 of those states. So both parties are making a pitch for the Indian American vote. And as the cliche goes, every vote counts, and this time especially so.
Adi, I was watching you watch the Republican part of the campaign ad mashup, and you were beaming, you were smiling, that Namaste Trump rally there. You couldn't have been happier. Why is it, do you think, that Republicans, and particularly this current administration, that they genuinely seem to have a great relationship with Modi?
Because the relationship is genuine. And I've seen this many times, many presidents in the past. They've done some work with the Indian community, Indian American community, nothing like Donald Trump. Nothing like that has ever been seen before. For him to go out and do this rally that he did in Houston, Texas, with Prime Minister Modi, walk around holding hands with 50,000 Indian American people from all over the country, it was a monumental moment in history. I mean, it was just, anybody that I spoke to, they stopped, they watched their television, anybody in the community, I should say. And then he went to India and he visited, and he went to Ahmedabad, India, and there was over 100,000 people in a stadium where the Indian people very much welcomed him and appreciated him. And so, I mean, I think there are so many other things I could talk about, which I guess it's what we'll talk about today, but it's just so exciting to see that. Because it's something you've never
Adi,
seen before.
what's the strategy then? So you're saying there's a genuine relationship, a genuine friendship. How does that turn into votes in the US? What's the strategy?
There are a lot of people in the Indian American community that are still very connected to their home communities back in India. My parents included, my family included, my grandmother still lives in India, so we do visit, we pay attention, we think about the politics back home. And I think that people really do care about that relationship and what it's going to mean for them. And that's why people really do pay attention. And also, for those that do support Prime Minister Modi, which, by the way, very popular Prime Minister, got elected for a second term in a very large way, with a majority of the vote, in a parliamentary system with no coalition government, very popular. So for him to step up and basically endorse the president of the United States on a main stage, people that pay attention to him are going to pay attention to the president more.
Sana, what's your analysis of this situation? The Democrats are wooing Indian Americans, the Republicans are wooing Indian Americans. Help us understand a little better.
I think it's complicated, and a lot of that has to do with just evaluating each candidate for who they are and what they bring to the table and where they are in terms of their position on different issues. Certainly at the national level, I see that there's a very diverse understanding of how people view this Modi-Trump relationship. Of course, the Indian diaspora in the United States is not a monolith. It is just as diverse as India itself. And so that is incredibly important in understanding where the Indian American vote will be. This, I think, we were just talking about that Howdy Modi celebration where there was essentially a massive celebration of a genocidal killer, in Houston, Texas. So this is not in tune with the ideas of the Indian Constitution or the U.S. Constitution. So I really question, what is driving that sort of that zeal, and that it's something to be vigilant of, the sort of ideology that is driving that. But again, I think, we have this extraordinary moment in history where we have a vice presidential candidate that is of Indian American background. And so that is really it's just an exciting moment in our history in this country. And also just that the complexity of her worldview that she brings to the table and to leadership, I think that's something a lot of Indian Americans, especially of the second generation, can really connect with.
All right, Sana, take a pause, because in the we've had 2 weeks in the United States. There was a Democratic convention, then there was a Republican convention. Both conventions had very high profile politicians with Indian heritage. Let's do a mashup so you can see both of their approaches to perhaps increasing their Indian American voters and support.
My mother instilled in my sister Maya and me the values that would chart the course of our lives. She raised us to be proud, strong Black women, and she raised us to know and be proud of our Indian heritage.
I am the proud daughter of Indian immigrants. They came to America and settled in a small southern town. My father wore a turban. My mother wore a sari. I was a brown girl in a black and white world. We faced discrimination and hardship, but my parents never gave in to grievance and hate. My mom built a successful business. My dad taught 30 years at a historically black college.
Seema, who did it better?
I don't think I want to get into that, but I'll make a few points.
Okay, go ahead.
Kamala Harris talked more about, her African heritage until she made a bid for the presidency herself. Then she started to embrace her Indian American heritage in public a little bit more. And now she talks more and more about it. Mixed heritage is a complex thing, and it's neither good nor bad. She is a politician. Nikki Haley became a Christian when she married her husband, but she grew up as a Sikh girl of Indian immigrants in a small town. So I think both did well. Both are embracing their heritage, because today America is more accepting of biracial people. It's as simple as that. 10 years ago, it might have been more difficult.
Adia, I want to put this to you. It's a little comment from Vinay. We spoke to him a little bit earlier, and the basic premise behind this is that because Indian Americans often vote Democratic, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're in the bag. Let's have a listen to Vinay first, and then you can come off the back of it.
With somebody like Kamala Harris, it's essential to negotiate the significance of her representation in that office with her troubling career as a prosecutor. Her refusal to prosecute one West Bank while instead targeting the mothers of truant children. These all raise questions of elitism and privilege that I think are worth asking.
Adi, go ahead.
What I saw about Nikki Haley that I liked about the convention that just happened, the Republican convention that just happened this past week, is that she really has never not embraced her background. That's something to be said. She's always talked about it. She's very proud of it. She's talked about her Sikh parents and the way that her children still go to the Gurdwara with her parents, and so on. With Kamala Harris, what I would say is that she has this reputation in Washington, having been in Washington. She's had this reputation in Washington where she's Indian American when she's at an Indian American fundraiser. And then other than that, it just depends. Depends who she's talking to, maybe, but that's at best. And that's something that I think people really feel in the community. That's something that I think I've seen in conversations with people, my family, friends, so on and so forth. Very real conversations. So I wonder how much that will really translate. From the perspective of what you're saying in Vinay and other things in the past, I do think that the Indian American community being elevated to the level that it's at right now is also very exciting. Both parties going after the community that I'm part of is something that I find to be very exciting.
Everybody wants you, Adi. Sunny, go ahead.
In terms of Nikki Haley or
Sunny.
Kamala Harris?
Yeah, I could see your face making movements. Articulate what you were doing on your face. Yeah, go ahead.
I see in Nikki Haley the only thing that brown that she brings to the table is, just what's on the exterior. I don't see that she's connected to her roots. When she made that speech the other day, I was just fascinated by what part of her Indian identity that she feels authentically engaged with. So, yeah, that was interesting.
All right,
Well,
let's go to...
may I jump in?
Yes, Seema, go ahead. Please, go ahead.
I think it's very rich to, say that someone embraces their identity. We don't know. I think both women have embraced their identity, and I don't think it's fair to say that Nikki Haley didn't earlier. She actually has quite a good record as governor. And if you remember that she took down the Confederate flag, this is something people don't remember. So, as an impartial observer sitting equidistant from both women, I would say that, one shouldn't undermine Nikki Haley's record just because you're a Democrat.
Let's go to YouTube. YouTube is very busy right now. So Roop, for instance, says, I take it as they are trying to woo Indian voters at the time when there was a rightward shift in politics, and Indians actually like Mr. Trump. Indian American voters are no longer a given for Democrats. Ada, you take that one.
I think he's right. It's very true. President Trump has done not only these rallies and things we've talked about, but he celebrated Diwali in the Oval Office. He has appointed many Indian American people, not only Nikki Haley to his cabinet, but many Indian American people to his administration. We're talking about judges. We're talking about people in very senior positions like Ajit Pai. We're talking about so many folks that he's worked with that people are very excited to see. He has very much embraced the Indian American community, and that's something that I hope that continues, not only with his presidency, but future presidents.
Sana, let me give you a YouTube comment here. This is from Parwan. Thanks, Parwan. Indian votes are the deciding factor in US polls. Whoa, that's a lot of power. Sana, do you agree?
I think that there is I think the Indian Americans bring an integral power to this election, and it's exciting. As Seema mentioned, there are the critical populations in swing states. That's something to really look at. But yeah, I do think there is some of that there at play there. But I do think also that there's we're kind of in this time where there's a great divide between the sort of the first generation of Indian Americans and second generation of Indian Americans, and kind of where we sort of prioritize, our political engagement, what drives us. And I see that divide, especially in this election. Yes, I was amused by Nikki Haley because, I haven't seen her engage in some of these issues, maybe in the way that I had hoped that she would have. But I think that divide is really also is much more pertinent now than it has ever been historically. And we do see a lot of Indian Americans. Yeah.
You said the generational divide. Can you just sum that up in a sentence? So the younger generation think like this, the older generation, what is that divide? Can you explain it?
Yeah, I think that the younger generation, the second generation, I should say, and as we're coming of age, I think that our priorities are what are the issues that really matter to all Americans here. And some of those issues are, and it's a much more progressive sort of political framework. There's, Medicare for all, access to higher education, all of that, those are issues that we care about. And we don't see that, obviously, the Republican Party prioritizing those issues. And we see the Indian American first generation much more ideologically aligned with this Trump-Modi relationship, even though that is not how Indian Americans have generally voted. But there is and it's really important to note that there's, what Modi is bringing to the Indian American sort of vote is this centering on this very right-wing Hindu ideology of Hindutva, and how that is impacting U.S. elections. Yeah.
So Finney Thomas is watching on YouTube, and Finney asked a little while ago, how many votes are at stake here? If Republicans and Democrats are wooing the Indian American vote, somewhere between 1.2 and 1.5 million Indian American votes are out there for either Republicans or Democrats to try and grab. But typically, Indian Americans vote Democrat. Let's have a listen to some that we spoke to earlier.
Corruption has become prevalent in everyday life in the US under the current administration, and we will push back on that with this choice. Black Lives Matter is progressing in a similar track where politicians are using systemic racism to divide, much like the corrupt caste system that the politicians in India used to abuse its political power.
Far too often, Indian Americans are held up as a model minority but we know this is a tactic used to divide people of color, and we can't let that happen. I'm excited that we have Kamala as our vice presidential candidate. It's a game changer to see someone of mixed race and of Indian heritage on the ticket. But we must remember that simply electing a person of color doesn't mean that the work is done, right?
As a fellow half Indian woman, I'm especially excited about Kamala's nomination. She represents what this country really looks like. We're a diverse country, but Trump has weaponized our diversity. He's denigrated American veterans, Muslims, Mexicans, the disabled. The list goes on and on.
Let me show you something on my laptop, guests, and particularly Seema. So both parties are playing their Indian American cards. So this is Kamala Harris and her mother back in 2007, touting her Indian heritage. Biden-Harris campaign have an agenda for the Indian American community. They're saying, this is what we're going to do for you Indian Americans if you vote for us. And then there's this friendship between Modi and President Trump. When it comes to deep issues, Seema, what do you think will be the deciding factor on which way these 1.2 million voters may well lean?
Okay, so the older generation still has a deep connection with India, and they feel that President Trump respects India. That's the word they use very often when I talk to them. And it cannot be denied that under Trump in the administration, certain things were done that the Democrats were unwilling to do. For example, selling India weapons that it wanted, armed drones, for example, to better sort of monitor the borders in the maritime domain. That's one thing. And generally, the Trump administration has been out there vocally on the China issue. And India and China are having a serious border situation. China is occupying quite a bit of the territory. It's on the Indian side of the line of control. These things play with older Indian Americans. And these are important issues. So even the Democrats have to reckon with this. China is a competitor, more and more. And the relationship with India, no matter whether it's Modi or some other Indian prime minister, the relationship with India is very important if the US is to take China on. Because India is a large country, is the only large country in Asia that can be a US partner, and it's a democracy.
Seema, just very briefly, have you seen anything quite like this before? You've been reporting and writing and doing journalism in the US for some time now. Have you ever seen the two major parties woo the Indian American community quite like this?
No, never. This is the first time because firstly, the community has come into its own, shall we say. More people have registered to vote. Many Indian Americans used to not register. They didn't become citizens. They were living here on green cards. So there's been an upsurge in all of that. The parties are wooing, as I said before, because of the battleground states. And that's where this election will be won or lost. And until now, the Democrats never used to woo the Indian Americans at all. It's the first time they actually had a program where they paraded their,
They have an agenda. Seema, I'm going to leave it there. Thank you so much. We could keep talking about the Indian American community in the US. It's such a novelty to be able to do that. It's so nice to have all of you here in this conversation. Adi, thank you. Sana, thank you. Seema, thank you very much. Political pundits on YouTube, I know I'm still going to say this. Thank you very much. Really appreciate your feedback and weighing in on the conversation. This just wraps us up for today's home edition of the stream. I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching, everybody. Take care.